Hey, welcome to Hell in a Hallway. Here with your host Billie. So awesome to see you. This is a continuation from last week's post, and we talked about last week's podcast, and we talked about power, potency, and purpose. And just to recap, the overall purpose was to ensure that we seek out potency over power. And if you remember, power comes from the outside of you. It's externalized. It's externalized validation that really is the dirtiest type of fuel to fuel yourself with. Potency is already what is within, right? Remember that? It's almost like when I talked about if you have an apple seed, an apple has seeds in it. You don't have to say, okay, apple, what's your purpose? Well, the purpose of the apple is to create more apple trees, and that tree and that tree creates more apples, and which creates more apple trees, right? So in one apple there is an orchard of apples. And that is the same with us. We have potential that resides within. But most of the time, or a lot of the times, we seek power, which actually comes outside ourselves, which is not the most positive way to move forward in determining our purpose and why do we think that we are here. Now, initially, I remember I said I was going to put together steps to determining purpose and things that we can do to determine and find that out. But as I was processing, I decided that we need to take a step back first. Before we decide who we are, we have to figure out and understand who we're not. See, many times what I remembered when I did the survey from before, that a lot of guys had said that they kind of didn't know their purpose, maybe because of whatever traumatic experience that they have encountered, and it kind of muddied the way for them. That's what I want to focus on today. I want to focus on the thing that's covering up your potency. I want to focus on the thing that gives you a false definition, a false narrative of who you are. You become in alignment and agreement with it. Therefore, you don't uncover what's already there because you're only seeing the deceiving lie of the narrative from the trauma, right? So what I want to be able to share is I saw this interesting documentary on memory and how memory is located in multiple areas of the brain. So that I kind of had awareness of, right? So let's say you go to a concert. When you go to retrieve that memory, all those things are not located in one place, right? The sound of the music, a person's face that you recognize, how to get to the concert. Those things are located in different areas of the brain. And there is a part of the brain, I want to say the medial temporal lobe, that is the part that is going to say, oh, you want to remember the concert? Okay, let me grab this file, right? And it brings it all together and says, okay, Billy, there's your memory. But the part that I didn't mention is my perception of the event, right? The idea that the narrative behind the event that I attach to it. You want to know where that comes from? Perception is straight out the imagination. And I don't know why I didn't know that, because it makes sense, but it's something that I never tied together. So imagination lives in the same place as memory. So when we attach a perception, a narrative to memories, we're creating something that is not real. Okay? It's not necessarily real, let me say that. And that is so important to acknowledge, because many times we'll have a circumstance that happens in our life. So the circumstance is the fact, right? It's non-disputable. No matter who tells the story, that is the truth, right? Billy is holding this cup. That is a fact. I'm holding the cup. The cup is not holding me, right? Now, your perception is she doesn't even like what's in the cup. I mean, there's nothing ever in that cup. I mean, why does she always have all these orange cups all the time? I mean, God, does she like the color orange? Those are perceptions, right? Those are things that we are creating and making up. Those are narratives. And from those things, we add judgments. Judgment says things are either good or bad. And from our judgments, we have emotions. And then when we have these emotions that are attached to our perception, we have a visceral response. So what does that mean? We have a body reaction. And when our body reaction is connected to our perception, it feels so real. It feels so real. So I have been encouraging clients. This cat's going to keep joining us, isn't she? I have been encouraging my clients to consider the alternative, right? The alternative perception. So let's go over it again. We have a fact. What is the actual fact of something that actually happened to you? Not what you think, not why, but the fact. You know, you got into a car accident. That's a fact that actually happened. Somebody hit your car while you were going to the grocery store. Facts, right? What are the perception that you can attach to something like that? Oh my goodness, it is not safe going down this road. Oh my goodness, this road is full of people who cannot drive. It is not safe going down here. That's the perception. Judgment. That's bad. Now I get on the street. I get anxious because my perception has reared its head that it's not safe, which reinforces the perception, right? Ooh, I'm fearful, so therefore it must not be safe. Do you see that cycle? And that tends to happen. We have it over and over again. Now, the part I want to add is that I started asking clients to ask yourself what really happened. What are the actual facts? And then ask yourself, what is an alternative perception? What else could it be? Practice alternative perceptions. The more you do that, the more you take away the intensity of the negative perception that you created. The more you give your brain the ability to have flexibility of thought. We get into a texting issue with a friend of ours, right? We're going back and forth, and we are constantly responding to our perception of an event, right? Constantly. And when we don't clarify that event, we don't take time to clarify, we live in those particular perceptions. And when we live in those perceptions, anytime something remotely looks familiar to that, we react as if it's the old memory from before. And it's not even that. It's not even that memory. And yet we have a reaction. We have a body reaction, we have an emotional reaction, and we have a psychological reaction. Those things can actually create layers and layers and layers of residual trauma on top of our potential. See, we can't get to what we're supposed to do and we can't even get to who we really are because we're too busy being covering who we're not. Consider the alternative perception. What else could it be? Because we are so quick to dig our heels in what is. What else could it be? You know? So here's what I will say. It's important for you to know. If in fact you clarify your perception, guess what, folks? It's no longer perception. It is indeed fact. You don't have to put it in your perception. Well, my perception is no, it checks out. That's fact. That's fact. However, when you don't check out the perception, right? And you have a visceral reaction, which means, again, a body reaction, anxiety, pit in your stomach. You start getting tight. You get agitated. You always have a body reaction to very intense moods. I'm going to encourage you to spend time thinking about what your body does when you're upset, what your body does when you're anxious, what your body does when it's depressed, what your body does when it's hypervigilant. Pay attention. As Americans, we're very disconnected from our bodies. And our bodies is like the exclamation point to our emotional spaces. But we are very disconnected because we compartmentalize everything. And because we believe that perception is so true, so heartedly, that we struggle with believing that there's the possibility there could be alternative reality. I've worked with several individuals who were traumatized, let's say sexual trauma, right? And they'll have perception of, I brought this on myself. I should have fought harder. Nobody's ever going to want me again. I'm forever tainted. And they live according to that perception. Because to them, it feels so real. Because they are hyper vigilant, right? So now they have a somatic response of being on alert. And this alertness is tied to this somatic experience of their body of tightening, maybe shortness of breath, maybe they start to sweat, maybe their stomach gets tight. And that's tied to that emotional space, which is tied to the judgment of it being bad, which is tied to the perception of I'm not safe, which is tied to the memory of being assaulted. You see the connection, how they all kind of tend to line up? So ask yourself, so before we start trying to figure out what our potential is and who we are, let's first try to figure out who we're not. Let's clean the slate. Let's start anew. Let's decide that we are not our perceptions. We are not the narrative that we are drawing up. We are not the narratives that have been applied to you, to us, are we? Because there are people who have decided who you were, and you don't have to become in alignment and agreement with somebody else's perception of you. But what's more dangerous is the narrative that you have given yourself. When I have clients come to me and they'll tell me who they think they are, and then I ask them, when you by yourself, let's say 3 o'clock in the morning, you wake up in the middle of the night, do you say the same thing? And many of them bust out crying, and they're like, no. Then that's the person I want you to present, because that's the one impacting you. That's the one that's keeping you from uncovering your purpose. That's the one that's keeping you from being as potent as you can. I want to thank you for tuning in here at Hell in the Hallway again. I enjoy seeing you. And again, we're going to keep digging at this. We're going to keep working through this because goodness, Lord knows I want you guys to reach your potential. I want you to know who you are. But most importantly, I want you to realize who you're not. So thanks again. I'll see you next time. Love you.